Welcome to Libertarians Drinking Coffee Live, a little bit past 3 p.m. on the East Coast. And yes, I am here again. So many people jumping up and down because now Libertarians have a presidential candidate. And that's nice. But you know what? We also have lots of people who are running who aren't presidential candidates. I bug you about this all the time. People always go, Larry, we care about... No. I care about all of them running. We have lots of them, and often some of the most impact will be made more at a local level, which is why you see me so often do this show. And I have yet another person on, and someone who I've met personally, someone who is trying to make impact, trying to take some of the issues that a lot of people aren't talking about, big issues, bring them to the forefront. He is an author, he is an activist, he is an educator, and now, for some crazy reason, is running for U.S. Senate in Indiana. He is Andrew Horning. How are you, sir?
Well, the crazy reason thing is a heck of an intro here. So, yeah.
There we go. Yes. So let me ask it, brother. It is, I mean, there's a lot of things you could be doing, and this is very tough. You have picked a big one. Not you shouldn't do it. I'm not saying that, but I'm just being realistic. Running for Senate is a big deal. Why did you choose that?
Well, I've actually done this before, and I didn't learn anything from that, apparently, other than that, maybe getting 2 million people voting against you in a single day is a good thing for humility. But I don't know that there is a better platform from which to really reach. Let's be honest here. Most voters don't pay attention to politics until election season comes around.
100%.
And we still don't know as much about politics as we know about basketball or whatever. And so if you're looking at bang for a buck, local races, you have to go door to door. You don't reach many people, and your focus is actually quite narrow, and you're not really hitting the big issues that I want to discuss. So for me to discuss the things that I think are most important, corruption, war, finance, the money is going sour, all of that stuff, there really isn't any other way to do it.
That makes a lot of sense. Now that you say it, you won me over. All right, I'm in. You won me over. So
you did think I was crazy until just now. So,
well, you're still crazy, but you're smart too. So now you're both crazy and smart. So it's good.
That's good.
Yeah, totally makes sense. Because I know you do. You are one of the guys who talks about big issues. Most of the people, to be fair, that I have on the show, they're often talking about more localized issues, more localized things. You are talking about big things. Before we go to that, though, tell me about your race. Is this a 2-person race, 3, 4? We got a bunch of people in it. Incumbent. What's happening with your actual race?
Well, that's an interesting question because in Indiana, even though the Libertarians are on the ballot, it's seldom really a 3-person race because the Democrats really don't have much of a chance lately. It's mostly Republicans.
I know the feeling. It's the reverse here in New York. I know the feeling.
Yeah. So it's it really is almost the case that I don't have the same chance that the Democrats have. We can't really play in that monetary realm at least. But it's pretty much the case that in this case, especially since it was an open seat vacated by a senator who's now running for governor.
Very interesting. Okay, so it's an open seat, so no incumbent.
No incumbent.
Nice.
Well, that's also kind of a tricky thing because he's the anointed Republican is a current congressman.
Okay, so kind of.
Yeah, I mean it's relatively it's almost a rubber stamp that needs to take place. So Jim Banks is a Republican, and he's been endorsed by Trump. And he is, I don't want to say too much about him other than that
but let me ask the one question about that. Interesting here. I should be interested. Does a Trump, and I don't know this is ignorance for me, does a Trump endorsement go far in Indiana politics or not?
I'm afraid so. Yeah,
it does. Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
So there's, I don't want to invoke the word idolatry, even though I just did. But that's kind of the thing that goes along with Trump supporters. I get it. I do get it. I mean, we desperately want somebody to save us from ourselves. Sure. But I think that the Trump phenomenon is also one where we are avoiding our own accountability for our votes and unwilling to change what we've been doing all along. And so
let me pop to the other side, though, here, if I could.
Sure.
With this in mind, since Democrats know the odds of their victory are slim, Does that mean they don't show up? Does that mean they might vote for you? What do you think? How do you think that manifests itself?
Well, there's so much agitation in this election cycle, obviously between Biden and Trump, and now RFK Jr., that I think a lot of people are going to be pulling out all the stops. I don't
Mm.
know if it means, that there's going to be actually more Democrats showing up, at least the living kind, or whether it's going to be the other kind. And I mean, just as a side note, in 2004, I ran as a Republican. I won the primary, and we did a retrospective
Congrats.
analysis of elections, and we actually documented fraud and very significant fraud. So it always happens. We have quite a machine for it in downtown Indianapolis. And so it's
You're
not like it's
talking to a New Yorker, Andrew, about corruption. Come on. Come
well,
on.
maybe
I
we're
get it.
better.
I get it.
We're also next to Illinois, and at least they send their governors to
Oh,
jail. So yeah, so
that's true. Yes, we're better than them. Our governors rarely get caught. That's true. We're better than them. Yes.
yeah, so
That's
I don't
good.
know exactly how it's going to play out because there's so many rumors about Biden being replaced and how that's
Mm.
going to work out, and I don't really want to speculate. Really, my job is pretty simple. As a candidate, I'm offering an option, and I'm talking about what I think you said big issues. These are to me existential issues. I wish everything was local, but because our
Yeah.
federal government has gone way beyond its boundaries, nothing is local because
All
everything
right.
can be overruled.
So let me move on to that. But before I do, I'm going to ask my audience if you like what he's talking about, if you think this is important, if you care about Indiana and us moving forward as libertarians, do me a favor, follow him. Follow Andrew on X if you would. You can at Horning Senate or on Twitter. I don't care what you call it. Twitter, X, you call it what you want. Just follow him. I don't care which one you do. And if you want to support him, you can. You head over to his website, horning4senate.com. That's FOR if you're listening, not the number 4. FOR, horning4senate.com if you want to. You can donate if you've got some cash, donate some time if you want to do that. If you're around Illinois, if you're around the Illinois, Indiana area, well, if you're Illinois, you're corrupt. So don't. If you're in Indiana, go help them out if you can. Oh, good. I'm kidding. I'm as corrupt as you guys are. Anyway, so if you can, go help them out. But something else. Guys like Andrew always need social media warriors. Always. So if you can look at his stuff, see what he's doing, share, comment, like, all those things do matter. In fact, you can help us out today by clicking the like button right now. With this interview right now, click the button that is like. You can share it if you want to also. And also, you can let people know, put a comment, whatever the case may be. All good if you want to. So let's walk down some of these issues. You have a couple big issues. One of them I noticed immediately was the idea is you think there is a very imminent kind of socio-economic collapse. Tell me about that.
Well, it's already underway, really. I mean, I think renters can certainly see it now. Homeowners don't because of the Cantillon effect. But you think about the nature of our economy with fiat currencies all over
Did
the
you say the
world.
Cantillon effect?
Cantillon, two double L,
Cantillon.
Cantillon. It's the
So please
effect
explain that to the audience.
yeah, it's basically the way the Fed works, creating money out of nothing. The money that's newly created, it works best for the investment class because the money that the way the Fed works, they're creating debt instruments like bonds, and the debts are bought by people who are rich. The first issued money
Or
goes
governments.
to the investment. It goes to the people who have money already, and
Yep.
they get the benefit of their investments before inflation hits with that round of dollars. And so they call that the
Mm,
Cantillon effect, where the people who are closest to the issuance of money get the most benefit from it.
got
And
it.
the further away you are from it, like poor people, this is the, making rich richer and poor poorer. And that is the
Right.
nature of our fiat currency system. And we've been using our fiat currency as a weapon also. So the dollar has been weaponized for years. And that means that like the BRICS nations, they just added a whole bunch of new nations onto them.
Yep.
And they have vowed that in October, several nations are going to, as much as they possibly can, de-dollarize and start using BRICS nation currencies. And in fact, they're even using gold backing and that kind of thing to push
Yeah, I
away from
watched that. I was surprised.
Yep.
I didn't expect the gold backing piece. I didn't expect that. I mean, some people did, but I didn't. When I saw that, I was like, okay, now we may have a problem. now I'm getting worried.
That's kind of, it's counterintuitive that the Chinese, ought to be, the CCP is communist, And one of
Right.
their planks is really that they don't want to have, they want to have absolute centralized control over money, which gold is not.
Right.
So, it does, doubts were, well founded, but the fact is they're also realists, and
Right.
they have been buying gold, and they're using it as a weapon against us, essentially. So if they get sound currency, they can seriously cause us harm, and that is likely to happen very soon because we have been harming ourselves enough that we're very vulnerable to monetary attacks.
Wow. So you're saying we are making things worse.
Oh, yeah, we have no enemies worse than ourselves. Just you think about, even just in terms of war and all of the violence going around the world, who haven't we inflamed with the CIA or direct
Yep.
military intervention? And we basically have two prongs of our imperialism: the statecraft from the State Department and the CIA. The dirty stuff, the sneaky stuff from behind the scenes, and that's been going on forever.
So let me grab a couple comments and questions about this. Square Table Jennifer says the Chinese economy is on the brink of complete collapse. I'm not worried about China. Do you think that he has a point for this, or do you think this is not real? Is overblown? Because I've heard that this is going to, Russia's going to collapse. I've heard that forever.
Sure.
Where do you stand on this?
Well, malinvestment and all of that stuff aside, yeah, they could collapse. But as Xi already said, he can actually sustain a nuclear war, and he doesn't care. They can lose millions of people, they can lose trillions of dollars, and they don't much care. They've got an objective. They know what they want, and they come out and said it. So it's not like there's any secret to all of this. And yes, economies are graded on a curve. And yes, it's going to take a while before what the BRICS nations do in October is going to affect us directly. And so there's a lot of things that are they're pending. So
Okay.
China's cultural and economic woes are big, but they're also moving against those woes with what they're doing with the BRICS nations alliances. So there are a lot of things at play here, but I think the other phenomenon is that a cornered rat will fight. And China is
Oh.
an enormous cornered rat with lots of problems. They've got, lots, and we hear about we're certainly told about the internal problems in China, but we tend to ignore the ones here at home, and that is because
Mm.
we have sort of a veneer of civility and a veneer of wealth that is. Well, let me put this another way. We talk about 34 trillion in debt, but that's not the whole thing. We're not including Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid
Right,
unfunded
right,
liabilities.
right.
So if you include those, we're really talking about over $200 trillion that we just can't, once people stop buying our bonds because they start suspecting that we are not going to be able to pay them, which is really how the whole Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid thing is funded, then we are in serious trouble. And really, we're on a knife's edge when it comes to our monetary system. And a lot of people have been talking about the CBDCs as,
Yep.
or however we do digital currencies. It doesn't even have to be
Yep.
by a central bank, but they're talking about that means of control as a means of we're going to go ahead and crash the dollar, replace it with
I've
something.
heard that 1,000 times. People always talk about that.
Well, it's also a typical play of authoritarians to crash kind of like burning the Reichstag. You crash the
Right.
previous system in order to replace it with something that you want. And what they want
Got
has
it.
been articulated for over 100 years too. The Malthusian eugenicists who started all of like the Fabian socialists, the Bilderberg Group, the League of Nations, the
So
UN.
let me, we're going way big. I want to go a bit smaller for a second and focus back on Indiana if I could. I have two questions about that.
Mhm.
Joe asks, is Indiana a ballot access state race? So will you gain ballot access based upon your run?
No, we already have ballot access. We've had that since 1994. And
Okay.
in fact, while it's unconstitutional that we have separate laws for each party, we do have separate laws for each party.
I
And
know the feeling.
libertarians have, yeah. Well, in Indiana, by our, Indiana code, we've got 6 different categories of humans when it comes to ballot access. And while I hate that, I've tried to sue the government over it twice, the fact is, we have ballot access in Indiana, and we've been doing pretty well. And in fact, our gubernatorial candidate, Donald Rainwater, got close to 12% in a 3-way race.
That guy is a treasure. I love him. He is a
Yep,
treasure.
he is
I love him.
indeed.
Yes,
Yes.
absolutely. So I'm glad. So you guys are communicating, so we're good.
Yeah, we're buddies, and yeah. In fact, I'm going to be seeing. We're going to be working a booth at a gun show this weekend, so that's going to be fun.
Nice, very good. Well, Mike Voss, who lives in New York with me, he teases. He goes, "New York Democrats leave office before they get caught, and then they keep the campaign money." He's not wrong. I mean, that's true. We're better at corruption. We just are. We're just better at corruption. It's absolutely true. So I want to move to the next level, which is what I think everyone is worried about. Well, I'm sorry, should be worried about. May not be, but should be worried about, which is the more we move towards some form of collapse, I think it becomes obvious that it increases the odds of war, right? The more we move towards collapse, I think the odds of war increase. Nothing's guaranteed either way. We go to war being happy and go to war being unhappy, but I think the odds do increase. And the worst part is, while I hate all wars, if there's another, like Iraq or another Afghanistan, that will suck for our veterans. But for most Americans, they won't feel it. My worry is a big war. And I think yours is too, like a World War III type, where it really affects everybody. We can't just send our young off to die and be broken. We all will be affected by it. A whole different issue.
Oh yeah, well, we may not see how we've been affected by our past wars. The trillions of dollars in debt that are due to that. We also maybe I don't know. I think a lot of people understand that a lot of our soldiers come home with lots of problems.
I understand completely.
Yeah, and so the suicide rates, there's so much associated with this that really does affect everybody. But what we are talking about with poking the bear, and what we're doing, putting boots on the ground, actually in Taiwan, all of this is how else should Russia and China and the BRICS alliance see this? I mean, it's been kind of articulated by most of these nations for a long time that we have already been at war, and that using our economic means of taking people's assets, giving them to somebody else, for instance, freezing Russian assets and giving it to Ukraine. What we did with the UN, making promises actually with NATO, where we promised the Russians in the 1990s that we were not going to expand NATO. And how is that? You look at the situation in Ukraine versus Russia and Taiwan versus China, and then you start thinking, well, why were we mad that there were missiles in Cuba placed there by Russia? It's roughly the same thing. We've been flexing our muscles at everybody, and everybody's flexing back. And you get to a point where you get hot-headed, and somebody makes a mistake. Whether it's another Ferdinand being shot, or whether somebody just says the wrong thing on Twitter. We're a funny species that way. And now that we're really talking, how many people have been saying that a nuclear war is actually survivable? And that,
well, let me move to two things, if I could. One,
sure.
You mentioned Ferdinand. Half my audience has no idea what that means. That was the guy who was shot, who started World War I.
Right.
Yes, just for those of you who weren't sure about that. Yeah, look, I know you're smart, you're a professor, but I got to sometimes let regular people know what you're talking about. That's all. So yes, not everybody knew that. So yes. The second piece I want to bring up is a comment, which I think a lot of people are thinking, but I think he's wrong on this. As if I can pronounce it right, the anarcholeptic, I think that's what he's called himself. The anarcholeptic says, everyone knows the collapse is coming. People just don't want globalism. I'm not sure he's right. I think there are a lot of people on both sides who have no idea, who are just living in a fantasy world and don't think a collapse is coming and just think, America, yeah. I think some people do think that. And I think another one is, I think some people don't care about globalism as long as they can, watch their TikTok and play their video games. I think it's fine. Whoever's the king is the king. Can I pay my bills? I think there's a chunk of the world that agrees with what he's saying on both sides, and a chunk that disagrees on both sides. Am I wrong here?
No, I absolutely agree with you. I think we play word games sometimes. Even like with the changing of liberalism, and these words change, and then people have different ideas about them. Globalism is another one of those words that has a different invocation for different people. And so if you say globalism
Okay.
to somebody in business, they think, well, I like free market. I like to be able to buy coffee beans from South America, and it makes sense to think of globalism in that sense if you're in a business of coffee beans. But if you're looking at seriously who started this, it's the people involved that concern me. So you think about the
What do you mean by that?
motivation. So the motivations of the people behind the League of Nations and the UN. If you look at the UN Charter, where it's talking about the goal was to have one world army, where it's a monopoly on violence that you don't vote on anymore. That it's no longer something where you can look up your local councilman, and you have to go to the UN to get your sidewalk fixed. One world government may sound good in a dreamy kind of a sense if you're thinking that it's going to be taken over by a nice person, but that's not how humans work. And so globalism, if you're looking at it in the more historically typical notion, where just replace that word with global domination, suddenly it sounds like an entirely different thing.
Right.
So,
hold on. David says, I think he's on board with you. He says, I think a lot of people do want globalism. I've spoken to many who support this. He says, because they view it as utopian rather than authoritarian.
exactly. And by the way, hi, David. He's a friend of mine.
Oh, here we go.
So, yes, I think that is exactly correct. And that who really wants to think of themselves as an authoritarian? For instance, I already said the word liberal, which now means the opposite of what it means in the rest of the world and what it used to mean. But if you think about, I'm a liberal, that means I'm not an authoritarian.
Right.
That's what goes on in your head if you're, a leftist. And yet, if you start thinking about what it is that the libertarians and liberals and authoritarians and socialists and fascists actually believe, you'll see that we play a lot of word games with ourselves that are very dangerous. And that's
the actual people who are titled liberals in America are not liberals,
right? And that's what
at all.
If this is what it's kind of amusing. I hate to invoke Hitler right away, but
it's Godwin's law. Have you heard about Godwin's law? It's Godwin's law. It always goes down to Hitler at one point.
Here sooner or later. So anyway, now that we've gotten past Godwin's law, if you were to listen to Hitler's speeches and what he promised, it would sound good today. And you think about, why was he so admired in the USA that Ford gave him engines, and the Bush family and others, the Rockefellers, gave him money. He was heavily funded by the West, and he was kind of a darling of a lot of people in the West until suddenly he wasn't. And that's kind of the way everything works. We were allied with the Soviets, and the New York Times was lauding their success and all of that stuff. Even we forget about things like the Holodomor in Ukraine and all of that. But the fact is that our word games, our definition of words, that's everything in politics. Words are law, and you change the meaning of words, you change the meaning of laws. And when we play with things like liberal, conservative, left, right, and we're not actually speaking to the direct truth of what it is we're trying to get at, it's easier to divide people on those words, and it's harder to bring them together if they have different definitions for them. And so
let me, if you guys are listening right now, I'm talking about audience for a moment, and you like what you're hearing, then click the like button. Click the button that is known as like. It's free. Do it. It helps everybody out. Please do it. If you happen to be watching on Twitter, you can always retweet this, re-X this. If you're watching on YouTube, you can always just share it. And every place you're going, on Facebook, whatever, share it. It does matter. Please do so. If you want to support what Andrew's trying to achieve, you can do it two ways. One, follow him on X. It's at Horning Senate. If you want to support him other ways, you can support his campaign directly. Horning for Senate, and that's FOR, not the number 4. Horning for Senate. You can donate if you want to. It's not to be a volunteer. He needs social media warriors. Help him out to make this work if you can. Local people matter, doing local things, even though he's talking big issues. And I like it because I don't often get big issues here. I'm glad to get them. So I want to move on to, I guess, 2 pieces. I think they're related. The first we just talked about. All right. A socioeconomic collapse is going to increase the odds of us going to World War III. Great, you're telling us that. I think a lot of people would believe that. Some people are happy with the global world order. Some people not. But tell us, what can we do? Is there an answer, or are we just screwed until after it's over and we're going to figure out how to fix it afterwards? Is there something we can do?
Yeah, I mean, there's always something we can do. You know, most of my book, Relighting the Torch, is about, you know, how we got screwed up, how, you know, things are supposed to work. And really the fact that we are in charge of all of it. You know, government's just our avatar after all. I mean, it's a reflection of who we are. Our choices is government. And, you know, unlike our founders who really couldn't vote away anything, they had to pick up guns and shoot their government, where we have the power of peaceful revolution just by making choices. And we've not even tried that. It's frustrating that, you know, you see approval rates going down into single digits, but re-election rates in the U.S. House of
Right.
Representatives, for example, goes up above 98%, and it's essentially 100% the same with our two-party choices. We don't vote
Right.
for alternatives, and when we think that, you know, I don't, you know, vote for the party, I vote for the man. That's really the truth is we do. I ran as a Republican. I raised less money as a Republican than I did as a Libertarian, both before and after. And I was saying the same things. And I got 10 times as many votes as a Republican, which so that basically disproved what we say about money and what we say about, you know, I vote for the man, not the party. So most of what we think about politics is bunk. And really the bunk is kind of in the same direction. It's all kind of to make us feel helpless, and that there are processes and reasons why we can't vote this away. And it makes it so you can't fight city. But we do. We've changed a lot of stuff. We have what we have chosen. And the fact that things have changed so drastically, even just lately, is because we have been voting for this. And, you know, you take any problem and you start, you know, analyzing how it happened to us, and you'll find an electoral reason for it. This is our choice.
Well, so, you are winning somebody. He's supporting you. He says it right there. You got one.
Well, one. Thank you. One down, 2 million to go. So
there we go. Oh, good. You also got Juan on your side. Juan says, Andrew nailed it. I will start calling it global domination instead of globalism, because too many people don't realize we don't need another layer of government with no accountability running our lives.
And that no accountability thing is a key thing. And that's part of a bureaucratic state problem too. And that most of our laws are not even written by lawmakers anymore. They're written by unelected bureaucrats and executive agencies.
Absolutely.
And that's disastrous.
So you have something which I think is kind of, this part to me seems a bit controversial in the libertarian world. Yeah, immigration, right? You have a lot of libertarians who are like open borders, some who are like shut the border down, some who are like, we got to find a middle ground. This is one of the things that bounces back and forth within the libertarian world. And you said that you think there's 40 million undocumented or illegal workers in America?
Yeah. Well, that's
a lot.
Yeah, sure. It's enough to change the course of our civilization, of course.
But my question is, the numbers I've heard have been somewhere between 10 and 12 million. And then recently a couple of million came in after that. That's the numbers that I heard. So when I saw you were talking about 40 million, I'm like, wow, that's a massive jump. Where do you get those numbers from?
Well, if you think about where that 10 million came from, that's an old figure. That's actually,
it is.
You know, and look at how long this has been going on. We're going back to Reagan, who really started the amnesty business. And it's not gotten better ever since. And when, you know, Trump, you know, whatever you think about him, he was reversing the trend, and we were still getting an awful lot of people, you know, moving in here. And now the issue isn't really so much that these people are coming here of their own volition. We're paying to bring them in. And, you know, we have airliners and buses and trains and all kinds of things to ship these people from what we, you know, the kind of the lower half of our globe, including Africa and everywhere else, into the country for all kinds of reasons. And without getting too much into the sources, because then everybody starts debating sources, and that becomes a partisan argument. The fact is, this has been going on long enough that I think people can see in their own experience, even in rural places. I live in Freedom, Indiana, which is like the middle of nowhere in southern Indiana.
Oh, what an amazing name, Freedom, Indiana. I'm going to move there.
Yeah, well, I looked at we looked at other places when we bought our farm. I looked in Liberty, I looked in Freetown, I looked at anyways, it's not like I have issues with that. But the fact is the immigrants are filling a necessary role for good and bad reasons. And so we're not having babies anymore. And Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid require a growing population, as does our monetary system. And
So if you add this up, I guess I'm just to be real fast. Michael Voss brings up, I heard unconfirmed totals between 10, 11, and 21 million. Me too. I heard between 10 and 20 is what I heard.
Right.
And 40 million is a new number, which is why I brought it up. But I'm going to say, for the sake of argument, you're right. 40 million. That's a lot of people. Even if it's only 10, it's a lot, right? But 20 is a lot, whatever the number is a lot. What do you think we do? In other words, what is do we just do amnesty? They're all citizens tomorrow. Do we throw them all out? What is there some combo? How do we handle? I mean, because reality is, Square Table Degenerate says a lot of industries need them, right? And I think that's right. We do need the labor. You've mentioned that we need them to help out because we're not having babies. I feel like there's no simple answer for most politicians. I don't mean to be putting you on a spot here, but it's a big deal. How do we handle it?
I'm running for big office. You should put me on the spot. And that's where, unfortunately, the numbers, we've been lied to about a whole bunch of stuff, obviously.
Sure.
And, when you're looking at, the reasons, I'd rather concentrate on the reasons and the solutions. And you can see why we want to hold labor costs down.
Sure.
And that's what you do with illegal aliens. And that, it helps with a lot of industries, like farming and so on, that are becoming increasingly centralized.
Hospitality.
And we're pushing hospitality. But, some things like agriculture, we're pushing out small farms and getting increasingly industrial. And
Absolutely.
this big ag is a big mover in this. And so big ag is actually paying to bring in people, whereas small farmers do not. And
I tell people that all the time in New York. They're like, we don't want these. I'm like, the farmers upstate New York, they're literally paying on black market to get them here. Like, they tell me, like, I know what's happening. You're totally correct. People don't believe me.
Yeah. I mean, well, you're also looking at, what we're going to do about it next. I've always said, like a lot of libertarians have always said, we need orderly borders. We don't need to close them. We need to have, uniform laws, which we have never really had. We've always had special rules for Haitians versus people from Cuba versus whoever. And so we've always had a patchwork of laws and problems associated to immigration. And we've made it exceptionally hard to get here the right way, which means that the only open door for most people is illegally. And there are a lot of, what they call coyotes and the other people that make it, they're bringing people across as slaves. I suppose I should have mentioned too, part of that number is slaves. And, when we're talking about the illegal, immigrants, we're also talking about an awful lot of sex trafficking. And, that is not an insignificant problem. It's also not an insignificant problem that a lot of these, the single males of military age are coming across, and we're bringing them. I mean, a lot of these people, we're shipping them in unvetted with no IDs. And we're paying for you in New York City, this. We're paying for their living expenses and all of that, giving them credit cards. And so, there's you have to wonder what that's really all about. And I've already given you a big number for, for the total number of immigrants. I hesitate to tell you what I think. It's going to sound very conspiratorial. Maybe I should just shut up. But here, people are thinking I'm smart. You're going to think I'm an idiot if I come out and say that a lot of this is a plan for like an international policing for the next pandemic or whatever we do. It's probably not going to be a pandemic. It's going to be something else, some kind of fear. But the fact is, this has been articulated for a long time by the UN. It's part of Agenda 2030. It's not secret. They've been openly discussing how they're going to do what's happening right now. And so, while a lot of conspiracies are bunk, generally it's the case that they're not as bad as what's really happening. And,
what's that old saying? A conspiracy is only a conspiracy for 6 months, then all of a sudden it's real.
Yeah. Well,
right? Yes.
I hate to put it to these people, do this way, but, how many people really knew that we had these basically stormtroopers with military equipment just everywhere, behind the scenes until the Boston Marathon bombing, when all of a sudden you had these black-clad troops and their black military vehicles just appearing as if they were just hidden in the sewers or something. They just
You've
popped
got
up.
Desiree on your side. She's yelling facts. She's with you. She's totally with you. Yes.
Yeah, and so the fact that we've been militarizing our own police, and we've been getting increasingly aggressive with what basically the authoritarian structure is all there. I mean, our government already has all of the tools, the people, and the power. Look at the percentage of Americans that are employed by the government now.
Oh, it's insane. In New York State, if you count those who are contractors, right, meaning they don't work directly for the government, but they work for a company that's under government contract, it's something like 1 in 5 or 1 in 6. It's insane in New York State. All the new businesses are military industrial complex jobs. Like they all are. It's crazy. You are completely correct.
So you're looking to see what is the percentage of people who work directly for the government, and then add in the number of people, and then look at the number of people who are living off of the government, who are dependent on government for their livelihood, like Social Security, Medicaid. The numbers are staggering in terms of who really is going to defy an authoritarian in this government. It's not. This is not like it was even during the New Deal. I mean, I think most libertarians would actually be delighted to have a government the size that it was under FDR.
Right, I know. Yes, you're probably right. Yes,
and it's only been growing with Democrats, Republicans. Doesn't make any difference. It always gets bigger.
So let me touch that piece. You've made a valid point. With all this happening, how does a guy like you make any impact? I mean,
ow, that's a painful question.
It is. Well, look, I deal with it too. I run.
I know
everything you're talking about. I'm like, how the hell do you do this? What I did, I don't know if I mentioned before, I went to small areas of New York State where most people wouldn't go, and people were excited to see somebody like me show up. And that's how I began to gain some momentum from that. And then that's how I grew. That's how I made impact. But I don't know if is that a thing you do? How do you? I mean, I raised $500,000 for my race, a lot of money for my race.
Oh, that I don't. Fundraising is that's like my kryptonite. And I've done lots of other stuff. I had a column in the Indianapolis Star. I wrote for Indiana Policy Review Foundation. I've sued the government many times. I've led protests. One of them made national TV. Some people claim that was the start of the Tea Party movement. I don't, but I've done a lot, and my name ID in Indiana is, kind of okay.
Oh, but good. Okay, so you got some ID. Good.
I got to just tell you, I've run for governor, I've run for Senate, and I'm just going to tell you a quick story that kind of illustrates my problem. I was stopped in a parking lot near a supermarket by this guy who says, I know you. Are you Andy? I think I know you. And I said, well, I ran for governor. He didn't mention my name. But he said, I think I know you. And I said, well, I ran for governor. No, I wasn't it. I've run for U.S. Senate. No, that wasn't. I run for U.S. House. No. I'm not interested in all that political stuff. And then it kind of came to him. You're Andy Horning. You used to race bicycles. And I said, yes, that's me. And he said, man, you got fat. And so, the fact is, people will know you for all kinds of reasons, but not usually politics. And you think about how many people know who their own state rep is, how many people even know who their own, how many people can name their U.S. senator. And so, getting out and getting around is something I've been doing for years. I've been going in parades. We have, fair booths where we do the world's smallest political quiz. I'm going to be at a gun show tomorrow. Yeah. I do this stuff, and people will listen to me and they'll say, gosh, I really like what you have to say. It's a shame I can't vote for you. So ultimately, what does it mean when you get in people's faces? There's got to be a trigger point. And I think it was best articulated in our Declaration of Independence when it said mankind are more disposed to suffer while evils are sufferable than to right themselves by opposing the forms to which they are accustomed. And we just haven't suffered enough yet. We haven't, we've got this.
Well, I always have to add something on this one. People always say, Larry, how bad does it have to get? And what I always say is it's not just that it gets bad. It must be bad and people must see hope. Both of those things together have to happen.
That's important.
Plus they see hope. And with that in mind, it's the perfect time to talk about your book, Relighting the Torch.
Yeah.
Right? That's what you're talking about. And by the way, you can check it out on Amazon if you want to, Relighting the Torch. The link is in both Facebook and on YouTube if you want to check that out in the show notes. So tell me about this, the book.
Well, my book has got a couple of key things in it. One is an annotated constitution, my annotations that have been used in homeschooling classes and things like that for many years. So it's the whole Constitution. So you can read what the words actually are, and I, interpose my, my little commentaries, because I think I've been told that it's extremely helpful for when I point out where things have really gone wrong and what these things actually mean. For instance, nobody knows that we're actually supposed to vote directly for the electors in the Electoral College. Just a simple thing like that would make people have an entirely different opinion about the Electoral College. And so I have that in there. I've got the whole Declaration of Independence with my annotations. And both of those things are a fairly small part of my book because they're both fairly short documents. The rest of it is about how it's actually all supposed to work, where we are now, why we screwed up. I've actually got a whole chapter on language, just because that's an important thing. I've got a whole chapter on the two-party system, which, obviously our founders warned us against not only political parties, but having only, two in particular. So, like Adam said, there's nothing which I dread more than a division of the Republic into two great parties. I don't remember the rest of the quote, but basically these guys were keen on avoiding the factions that tear people apart. And, political parties can be inherently divisive even within themselves, as some of us libertarians have experienced lately. And so the fact that we humans tend to be very tribal is a very dangerous thing. And so I discuss that at length. And all of this is before I get to the Declaration of Independence and Constitution. And then after that, I make my proposals for how to fix it. And there are a lot of, there are legislative proposals, but you can't get to legislative proposals through the incumbents that we have right now. And when people are crying for term limits and things like that, and they want their incumbents to vote for term limits, they're really not thinking straight. So, the fact that, maybe, I like the idea of term limits. We should have more term limits. And I wish we had term limits on bureaucrats and on parties and everything.
Yes.
And so you think, why is it that you have so many people saying there ought to be a law without thinking who's going to pass that law? It's like when, Republicans tend to blame, the politicians for selling out government. The Democrats tend to blame, the corporations for buying government. But the fact is, corporations bought our government because politicians sold it. And the whole problem
You're winning, Donnie. She's saying preach. You're winning her. She's saying preach. There we go.
Well, it's power. We have too much power in the wrong hands. And that's where, basically the underlying message of my book is that we have the power to fix it. Our founders had the power to fix their problems, and they didn't even have elections. They had to use much more tragic means. But the fact is, and this is a happy fact, the masses don't ever determine history, ever. It's always the passionate few who direct everything. And that's where, look at the passionate,
the passionate few direct everything.
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to totally steal that. Did you make that up?
Well, I don't know if I made it up, but I said it. So I
all right, so I'm going to use it, give you literally no credit. I'm going to act like I did it.
Well, we libertarians should want that. We should want our ideas stolen all the time.
Yep.
Because
totally
that's
that one.
What some people will call cultural appropriation or whatever. I call that advancement, and that's where
I like that.
If we should actually take back the words liberal and progressive, because we're the only ones who really want to progress from anything past Hammurabi. So,
I like that.
In fact, you think Hammurabi had only 282 laws carved into those silly. We've got.
I wish we only had 282 laws. I would take that right now.
Yes.
I'm in. So, let's make America Hammurabi again.
Yeah.
That's it. Yes.
So basically, what I'm trying to say in my book is it's up to us. It doesn't take everybody. What were the numbers for the founders? Is it like less than a quarter wanted to leave, England at all? And out of that less than a quarter, it was only a tiny fraction of them that actually fought. So, we're looking at a small number. And, well, actually consider how many people are ruling the world right now. It's an increasingly small number. not that
Less
many
and less.
people. And
Less and less.
we outnumber them millions to one. So, if we're looking at what, we have all the arms and legs, and we're the ones who pay their salaries, and we're the ones who comply with their edicts, when how many people from, Frederick Douglass, Martin Luther King, lots of people have told us that, or Jefferson, obedience to tyrants is disobedience to God, and that, you're supposed to disobey unjust, unconstitutional, illegal laws. And we have been so compliant, and not just compliant, but we've actually been actively choosing this stuff with our votes. There is, I mean, I hate to put it this way, because I suppose going on a negative attack campaign against voters probably has some limits, but we have nobody else to blame. And we have nobody else to turn to for the solution. So, it's all up to
you're
us.
talking about this. Let me walk to the final piece. What's a win? Is a win only getting the actual Senate seat, or is a win something else? Is that also considered a win?
I have been doing this for a long time, and I've never won public office, and yet I keep doing it, because I do hear from people who tell me, lots of people have told me they joined the Libertarian Party because of me, or they have an entirely different viewpoint on government than they used to because of what I've done over the course of the last, I hate to say it, 30 years almost.
Okay.
And so, it's been a long, plodding, difficult thing for me. And I believe my wife is up for canonization here shortly. But
wow.
I'm making that up. But
I love it. No. I love it. Let's do it. I'm in.
But she's put up with a lot. My family's put up with a lot. I put up with a lot, but it's worth it. If we can get just turning this around, where we stop falling along with the authoritarian fantasies of, one world government and global armies, which, you think about what that even means. Why would we need a global army if there's one government? And that starts getting insidious. You just put that stuff together. And it's you have all of these analogies to, like the Star Wars series and things, where, you have Emperor Palpatine, and from the democracy becomes and just the way we talk about democracies as if that's actually what we want, when, even our founders said, two wolves and a lamb voting on what to have for lunch.
Let me prove you right. One says Andy is libertarianism in Indiana. And then David says, Andy's being humble. He's the entire reason I decided to get involved in politics. I saw an interview with him on TV when I lived in Indy. He's a rock star. So I think you are correct.
Oh, thank you, guys. And,
there we go. So if you guys want to support this rock star, you can follow him on X, Horning Senate on X or Twitter. You can also, if you want to support his campaign, by going to Horning for Senate, FOR, horning4senate.com. You can donate there if you want to throw some cash his way. Every little bit counts, right? Every little bit it's a palm card he can give out. It's a door hanger he can put on. It's something. It's a Facebook ad. It's something. A card he can hand out. It's something, right? It's a
yard sign.
A yard sign. It's a fee to a state fair. It's something. Whatever you can do can help out. If you don't have the cash, you got some more time, no worries. If you're near Indiana or in Indiana, go hang out with them. Let them know. Volunteer, knock doors with them, go to an event with them, show up at the gun show with them, whatever. And if you can't do that, you can always be a social media warrior. We need social media warriors liking, commenting, and sharing. Andrew, I want to say thank you so much for giving me so much of your day. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you. This has been a great opportunity, and I enjoyed talking to you last weekend, and I really enjoyed talking to you now. So thank you very much.
I appreciate it. Everyone else watching, thank you so much for watching. I hope it was enjoyable and you got a lot out of it, and I will see you all very soon.